Do you ever wonder what heroes whisper about by the dying embers of a fire, long after the great battles have faded? In these stories, we'll peek into the quiet moments of Middle-earth, listen to the echo of footsteps in dark tunnels, and overhear silent conversations beneath distant stars. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. And now, get comfortable. Picture the crackle of logs in the hearth and prepare to listen. Did you know that the most important battles are often won not on battlefields where swords clang and arrows fly, but in silence, in waiting, in unsleeping vigil, when the whole world seems to stand still? Our world is full of grandiose events, spectacular explosions, and heroic feats that legends are made of, and ballads sung about for centuries. But what truly happens in those moments when heroes pause, when the echo of their footsteps fades, and only the mysterious whisper of the night remains, full of unspoken expectations? It is there, in the silent wait for dawn, that character is forged and true loyalty is tested, a deep, non-verbal understanding manifesting between those bound by a common goal. Imagine a scene unfolding deep within the vast forests of Middle-earth. Deep night, the forest stretching for miles around, enveloped in a thick veil of impenetrable darkness. The air here, in the heart of the wild, is permeated with the scent of damp earth, pine needles, fresh night herbs, and a light, barely perceptible hint of smoke from the only source of warmth. Somewhere in its heart, beneath the canopy of ancient mighty trees, flickers a tiny speck of light, a humble campfire, like a solitary heartbeat in the vast, sleeping body of the night. Stars, bright and countless, are scattered across the black velvet of the sky, like diamonds, guiding ancient wanderers and reminding them of the world's grandeur. And here, in this primal silence, filled only with the natural sounds of the wild, our story begins, a story of a silent vigil. On watch, first stands Legolas, an elf from Mirkwood. His silhouette is barely discernible against the mighty, rough trunk of an oak, with which he seems to have merged, becoming an almost indistinguishable part of the natural landscape. He doesn't just stand, he exists in absolute harmony with the surrounding world. His body is completely relaxed, yet every muscle, every cell of his being is ready to react instantly to the slightest threat. His eyes, which by day notice the tiniest detail on the horizon, be it a bird in the sky or a tiny flower at the edge of a path, now peer through the dense veil of darkness, seeing the invisible to mere mortals. They catch the slightest movement of wind-rustling individual leaves at the very top of a tree, or the almost imperceptible flight of a night moth drawn to the warmth of the fading campfire. His hearing is so acute that he can distinguish the rustle of leaves as the wind changes direction, or the faint squeak of a bat flying overhead. Legolas barely breathes. His breathing is so shallow that it makes no sound, no disturbance in the silence around him. He doesn't just listen with his ears. He listens with his entire being, with every cell of his body. The rustle of leaves under a light, almost gentle breeze, the crackling of dry branches somewhere far in the impenetrable depths of the forest, the quiet, peaceful murmur of a stream running nearby. Its gurgle seems like the night's lullaby. He discerns every sound, every nuance, separating natural noises, the sounds of wind, water, wild animals, from those that might be harbingers of approaching danger, a foreign intrusion. His hearing is so keen that he could hear a tiny drop of dew falling from a leaf, or the soft beat of a tiny moth's wings dozens of meters away. For him, night is not a cover that hides the world from view, but merely another, deeper and richer state of being, full of unique sounds, subtle scents, and barely perceptible shadows that remain completely unnoticed by an ordinary person. The elf is part of the forest, its invisible extension, its eternal, vigilant guardian. In his stillness lies incredible, almost supernatural strength, the calm of a predator awaiting its moment, or rather, of an eternal protector ready to break his invisible watch at any moment, should the slightest need arise. His thoughts, if they exist in this moment of complete unity with nature, are like light clouds serenely floating across the boundless sky of his consciousness. They encompass the tranquility of primal nature, the sense of eternity of ancient forests, and the awareness of the fragility of this beautiful world for which they, three brave companions, are fighting. He does not think of sleep, or fatigue, or the coming day. His vigil is not a burdensome duty, but a natural state of his being, an inner need for protection. Time passes slowly, measured only by the imperceptible shift of stars in the sky and the slowly diminishing flame of the campfire, which now barely casts shadows. Legolas does not look at the fire. For him, this flickering light is merely a guide for others, but not a source of necessary information. His keen sight and subtle hearing penetrate the impenetrable darkness like the finest, invisible threads, touching every corner of the surrounding space, exploring it far and wide. And then, as his watch draws to a close, he imperceptibly shifts his body, as if awakening from deep meditation or a trance, though he hasn't slept a single moment. His eyes are fixed on where his companions sleep peacefully. He doesn't call their names, doesn't whisper a word. He doesn't need to. He slowly descends from the tree, treading so lightly that even the forest floor, made of dry leaves and moss, makes not the slightest sound. His movements are graceful and silent, like the dance of a light breeze among the foliage, barely rustling the treetops. Approaching his sleeping comrades, Legolas barely touches Gimli's shoulder. The touch is light, yet utterly decisive, instantly jolting the mighty dwarf from the deep embrace of sleep. Not a single word is spoken, only a brief, profoundly understanding gaze, filled with unspoken gratitude for the transferred watch and unyielding, rock-solid trust. This silent interaction, honed over long months of shared adventures, countless dangers and hardships, speaks more than 1,000 eloquent words. Gimli emits a low, guttural grunt, stretches his whole body, loosening stiff muscles, and slowly sits up, his gaze immediately, instinctively, turning to the fading campfire, and then into the impenetrable, eerie darkness beyond. Now, Gimli, son of Gloin, takes the watch. Unlike the elf, he does not seek to blend with the shadows or rise above the ground to survey the surroundings. His place is at the very heart of the camp, by the fire, next to its life-giving warmth and flickering light, where he feels solid, reliable ground beneath his feet. Gimli is the embodiment of earthly strength, endurance, and reliability, like a mountain itself, incarnated in a dwarf. He does not sit absolutely still, like a statue carved from stone. He tosses a few dry branches into the fire, which had been collected beforehand and left to sustain the flame, causing the fire to leap merrily and eagerly upwards, casting intricate, dancing shadows on the surrounding trees and bushes. The crackle of burning wood becomes part of the night's symphony, a sound that simultaneously soothes and keeps him vigilant. The dwarf constantly holds his battle axe. Not just holds it. His strong, calloused hand firmly grips the carved handle, his thumb instinctively stroking the sharp, deadly edge of the blade, which has saved their lives more than once. This is not a gesture of aggression or a premonition of immediate battle, but rather an extension of himself, his loyal, reliable companion, ready to come to his aid at any moment, should an enemy dare to approach. Gimli surveys the surroundings slowly, deliberately, methodically, as if absorbing every corner of the space within his sight. His gaze does not glide, like Legolas's, over the finest, barely noticeable details on the horizon or over the treetops. He focuses on the immediate circle, at the base of trees, in dense bushes, on uneven ground, on every stone and root that might provide cover. He seeks not the faint rustle of wind or the distant breath of the forest, but rather a broken branch that someone might have brushed against, a fresh, suspicious track on the soft ground, something tangible, something that might reveal the presence of an unwelcome, dangerous guest. His hearing is tuned to different, lower, and coarser frequencies. He hears the coals crackle in the fire, the wind and gusts rustle in the treetops overhead, but his sharp mind automatically filters out these natural, harmless sounds, leaving only those that seem alien, unnatural, breaking the general harmony of the night. Perhaps it's the too loud breathing of a sleeping comrade, or a sound made by a night beast approaching too close to the camp, but with an intention different from seeking food. For Gimli, it's not the barely perceptible, mysterious whispers that matter, but rather the coarse, palpable changes in the surrounding world, those that cannot be mistaken for anything else. He trusts his proven senses, his strong hands, his keen but earthly practical intuition. The dwarf periodically rises from his spot to stretch his shoulders, walk a few steps around the perimeter to ensure that all is calm and there are no signs of danger. His steps are firm and confident. They do not conceal his presence, but neither do they betray any undue anxiety. He is like an anchor in this raging storm of night, strong, immobile, unyielding, ready to withstand any blow, any attack. In his mind, perhaps, thoughts of glorious battles, of the reliability of dwarven armor, of the value of loyal companions with whom he has shared so many dangers, rush by. He is not alone in this harsh world, and this realization gives him strength and resolve. He is here to protect, to be a strong, impenetrable wall between approaching danger and those he values and whose lives are sacred to him. He does not seek deep philosophical meaning in the boundless starry sky. His world is the solid, fertile ground beneath his feet and a loyal, sharp axe in his hands. He certainly feels tired after a long day, but it recedes into the background before an all-consuming sense of duty. The campfire slowly fades. Its flame diminishes, and then, as the moon begins to dip towards the horizon, Gimli gently but insistently wakes Aragorn. He does not shout, does not shake him. He simply sits quietly nearby until his presence, his unyielding vigilance, is transferred to the next watchman, the new link in their chain of defense. Aragorn wakes instantly, as if he had never slept, as if he had always been ready for any eventuality. There is no hint of sleepiness in his eyes, only a deep, concentrated calm and wisdom accumulated over years of wandering. He nods to Gimli, and this nod is not just a polite gesture, but a silent, profound confirmation of the continuous chain of responsibility that inextricably links them all into a single whole. Gimli, satisfied that the guard is awake and ready for watch, quietly retreats to his sleeping place, knowing that the camp is now in safe, experienced hands. It is now the turn of Aragorn, son of Arathorn. His watch differs from Legolas's and Gimli's. It is unique, as is the ranger himself. He does not stay still for a minute, not tied to one spot. He is a ranger, a wanderer, a man whose roots run deep into the wild, into its primal essence. His watch is constant movement, relentless patrolling, an almost endless circling of the area around the camp. He walks around the camp in a wide circle, his steps barely audible on the forest floor, yet they are not completely silent, like the elves. There is a slight, barely perceptible crunch of dry leaves under his boot soles, a faint rustle of thick clothing brushing against branches, sounds of a man who does not hide, but also does not draw unnecessary attention to himself. Aragorn moves like a shadow. His tall, slender figure merges with the forest's gloom, becoming practically invisible to an outsider's eye. He does not seek direct visual confirmation of danger. He feels it. He breathes it in. He senses it with every cell of his body. His keen sense of smell picks up the slightest changes in the scent of the night air, the smell of the campfire, the smell of damp earth, but also of alien, unfamiliar flesh, or even a slight change in wind direction that might bring tidings from afar, a warning of someone or something approaching. His skin, hardened by winds and hardships, feels the slightest change in temperature, the barely perceptible dampness of the soil, the faint, almost imperceptible vibration of the earth beneath his feet, which might be caused by the movement of someone large and heavy approaching the camp. Every step he takes, every breath, every movement is a deep, subconscious analysis of the surroundings. He reads messages left by the night, trampled grass, a broken twig, a barely visible track on damp earth or moss. For him, the forest is a vast, open book, written not with letters and words, but with signs, symbols, understandable only to those who know how to read them, who have spent their lives studying them. He can determine who passed here and when, in which direction they moved, at what speed. He can distinguish the sound of a pine cone falling from a branch from the sound of a beast's step, and the sound of a beast's step from the alarming, eerie step of an orc or other hostile creature. This is not just intuition or an innate gift. It is years, decades of life in the wild, constant survival, honing every sense, every instinct to its absolute limit. His gaze penetrates the densest darkness, not seeing individual clear objects like Legolas, but rather catching anomalies, disruptions in the general, natural picture of the night, something that stands out from the usual background. He looks not at the trees themselves, but through them, searching for the slightest change in shadow, a light, almost imperceptible flicker that might betray the hidden presence of an enemy. He listens for the slightest sounds, but not to enjoy the harmony and beauty of nature, but to catch a dissonance, a false note in this night symphony that might portend trouble. Aragorn carries on his shoulders not only the physical weariness of a long journey, but also the weight of his great destiny. He is a king whose throne and crown await him, but for now, he is only a ranger, guarding his friends and future subjects. His thoughts likely wander from bitter memories of the past to worries and apprehensions about an unpredictable future. He thinks of Frodo, of the One Ring, of the coming Great War, of the fate of all Middle-earth, which he is called to defend. But these profound thoughts do not distract him from his unsleeping vigil. On the contrary, they only intensify his vigilance, making him even more focused and dangerous to his enemies. Behind every step, every breath, every glance lies the awareness of the enormous responsibility resting on his shoulders. He walks one circle, then a second, a third. His route may constantly change. He never repeats it exactly, so as not to become predictable to a potential enemy. He stops for a moment, leaning against a mighty tree, to simply breathe in the night air deeply, to feel its coolness, its freshness, its unsolved mysteries. Then he moves silently forward again. He does not allow himself to relax or indulge in overly deep reflections. His watch is constant readiness, constant forward movement, even if that movement is in circles, around a small island of safety. He is the embodiment of an indefatigable will, living proof that true strength lies not in static rest, but in constant, meaningful action aimed at protection. When Aragorn returns to the campfire has almost completely died out, leaving behind only glowing, flickering embers, emitting faint, barely perceptible warmth and a subtle but persistent smell of smoldering wood. The sky in the east begins to slowly but surely lighten. From a deep, indigo dark blue, it gradually transforms into soft lilac and then into pale pink, presaging the imminent appearance of the sun. The harbingers of dawn, the first, timid but increasingly confident sounds of the awakening forest, the gentle chirping of the first birds, the soft rustle of the morning breeze passing through the still, dew-kissed leaves. Aragorn sits by the fire, tossing in a couple of the last, carefully preserved branches to rekindle the dying flame, to give it new life. He does not look at his sleeping comrades. He knows that, trusting him, they are resting after a long day and the preceding night watch. He simply sits, deeply inhaling the fresh morning air, listening to the morning sounds, his gaze fixed on the horizon, where soon the dazzling sun will appear, bringing with it a new day and new trials. The fatigue accumulated during the long, continuous night of vigil is felt throughout his body, but it does not weigh him down, does not oppress him, but rather serves as a silent yet eloquent testament to duty fulfilled, a testament to his loyalty. This quiet change of guard, this silent, deep understanding between them, is what makes them not just a company, not just accidental companions, but a true, inseparable brotherhood, bound by invisible but strong threads. They do not need words to express their gratitude, their unwavering faith in each other. Each of them knows that as long as one watchman is awake, the others can sleep peacefully, serenely, knowing they are protected. Each trusts the other with their life, their safety, their future. Legolas, with his elven, almost supernatural sensitivity, protects them from the most hidden threats, from barely perceptible rustles in the distance, from what an ordinary ear would never hear. Gimli, with his dwarven solidity, resilience, and earthy wisdom, protects them from immediate dangers, from what might creep too close to the camp, from direct threat. And Aragorn, as a ranger and future king, bears the burden of all responsibility, constantly scanning the world around, anticipating and preventing threats that others might not even suspect, ensuring their safety on all levels. Their styles of vigil are as different as their peoples, their life experiences, their unique abilities, and their worldviews. But together, they form a single whole, an unbreakable chain of vigilance, an unyielding wall. Legolas is the ear and eye, penetrating the very fabric of night into its smallest details. Gimli is the muscle and shield, an unwavering, reliable support at the very heart of the camp, its earthly protection. And Aragorn is the mind and will, relentless movement, scanning and protecting the entire surrounding area, ensuring strategic security. This is not just an ordinary duty. This is a ritual, repeated again and again throughout their long, arduous, and dangerous journey. In every touch, in every glance, in every quiet breath, the living story of their brotherhood, their boundless loyalty, their shared great destiny that leads them forward. They know that new trials await them, new battles, perhaps new losses. But as long as there is this quiet night, this fading campfire, these flickering stars, and this unbreakable trust in each other, they can continue their journey no matter what. The sun slowly but majestically rises above the horizon, painting the sky in fiery, golden pink hues. The first, still timid rays break through the thick tree canopies, illuminating the small camp with warm, life-giving light. Night finally recedes, taking with it its secrets, its dangers, and its silent challenges. The night watch is over. 3 hunters, 3 different worlds, 3 unique talents, united by one common goal, are ready for a new day, for its new tasks. They say nothing about what is past. There's absolutely no need. Their bodies, their souls, their deep, mutual understanding, all speak for them, far more eloquently than any words. And so, as the sun has fully risen above the horizon, illuminating the forest with a soft, golden light, Aragorn rises to his feet. He approaches the sleeping Gimli and Legolas, but does not wake them. He knows they will soon awaken themselves, when the first warm rays of the sun touch their faces, when the air fills with the scents of the waking morning. For them, a well-deserved rest has arrived, necessary before a new day. For him, however, as a leader and chief, the day has already fully begun, with all its worries and responsibilities. He checks the remaining provisions, inspects the equipment, preparing for the next stage of their incredible journey. This scene, this quiet, silent vigil, reminds us that true strength, genuine valor, and authentic courage often lie not in loud declarations or spectacular, flashy battles, but in daily, tireless vigilance, in the ability to selflessly trust each other and fulfill one's duty, even when no one sees or hears your efforts. This is a story of invisible heroes, of quiet valor, of unbreakable brotherhood, of how something far greater than the sum of its parts is created from diverse elements. This is a story of deep trust, of an unbroken will that leads them forward through darkness to light, through doubt to hope. After all, even the loudest victories, the most grandiose achievements, begin with the silence of the night watch, with a silent vigil that guards the dreams of a new day. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the quiet heroism that often goes unseen, please hit the like button, subscribe for more stories like this, and leave a comment below sharing your favorite moments of silent bravery from literature or film. Ever wonder where the world keeps its deepest secrets? It's not always out there among the stars or on some impossible mountain peak, is it? Sometimes, the most profound mysteries are hiding right under our noses, deep, deep beneath the earth. And these aren't just empty holes. Oh no, they're living, breathing places, holding on to history's whispers. Today, we're diving into one of those worlds, a place where light barely dares to tread, and every single sound tells a whole epic story. Think about it, a world carved by stone and time itself, where it's always dark, always silent, except for the odd, lonely sound. We're going to track a creature for whom darkness isn't just, well, not having light. For him, it's home. It's a refuge. It's his entire universe. Yeah, we're talking about Gollum, his endless obsession with his precious, and an unbelievable journey into the unknown that starts right here, right now. So, his world? It's this never-ending, tangled mess of tunnels, secret grottos, and those dark, underground lakes, all carved out over ages, right in the guts of this ancient, silent mountain. He knows every single crack, every damp stone, every little ledge in this place, like he knows his own shriveled hand. He can feel their texture under his bony, almost stringy fingers. He knows their smell, their unique echoes, how those sounds shift and twist depending on the space around him. For years, maybe decades, even centuries, he's just wandered this maze, muttering to his precious, his only pal, his silent sidekick, and, let's be real, the root of all his deep, broken madness. But here's the thing. Even in a place you know better than anyone, even after exploring it for hundreds of years, sometimes, just sometimes, you can trip over a door that seemed like it was never there before. And that's exactly what went down. Gollum was just shuffling his way through this narrow, totally familiar passage, heading further and further into the guts of the mountain, right to his favorite spot for catching those blind fish. A real treat in his super grim diet, you know. And then, out of nowhere, he felt something completely new. This faint little draft. Super weird for this part of the cave. Usually it's just dead still. The air heavy, humid, absolutely motionless. But suddenly, something was different. This soft, almost undetectable current of cold, surprisingly fresh air just brushed against his thin, pale face. His nose, already hypersensitive from years in the dark, twitched. He caught smells that were totally foreign. Not just the usual wet dirt and cold stone, but something cleaner, something untouched, like the very breath of a world that had been sealed away for ages. His super sharp senses, honed to an insane degree by all those years living in the pitch black and just constantly searching, they just woke up. This was something fresh, something totally uncharted, outside his domain that he thought he'd completely mapped out. He stopped dead, flattened himself against the rough, mossy wall, and just sniffed the air. Somewhere up ahead, past another bend he'd passed hundreds of times, a new route must have opened up, something hidden from him before. His heart, used to the slow, steady beat of underground life, started thumping faster, a kind of nervous but excited little drum. His thin, pale, yet surprisingly strong fingers ran along the wall, feeling every little bump, every dip, every tiny crystal stuck in that old, stubborn rock. And then he found it. This tiny, barely there crack. So narrow, you'd usually just think it was another bump in the wall, right? Except for that subtle, almost ghostly breeze whispering out from deep inside it. He had to squirm and twist himself all out of shape just to get through. Gollum's body, so lean and practically bone, just slid right into that tight space, like a snake slipping between rocks. The stone scraped him raw, leaving red marks and little cuts, but he didn't even notice. That burning thirst for discovery, that ancient, primal curiosity, just pushed him onward, wiping out any pain, any discomfort. He was an explorer, remember? The only thing brave enough to step into this brand new, utterly black unknown. Once he was inside, it was a totally different world from those old familiar tunnels. The air in here was colder, way fresher, like he was breathing the mountain's own breath, a breath that had just exhaled centuries of dust. He just stood there in this absolute darkness, so thick, so dense it felt like you could almost touch it, pushing in on him from everywhere. He stretched his gnarled hands out, feeling the walls. They were lumpy, covered in sharp, spiky bits, like ancient, fossilized teeth, scraping his palms and leaving these deep but fast-healing marks. But then, the texture shifted, suddenly becoming this amazingly smooth surface, like it had been polished by water flowing forever. It was limestone, smoothed over by thousands of years of underground rivers that probably changed their path long, long ago, leaving behind only this mirror-like trace. He took his first step, so quiet, so cautious, almost impossible to hear. His bare, webbed feet just barely grazed the damp, slick floor, which was covered in a thin film of ancient mud. But even that tiny rustle, that littlest splash, echoed like crazy, filling the whole space. An echo. In his usual tunnels, the echo was always muted, kind of deadened by all the bumps and twists and those sound-absorbing rocks. But in here, it just flew free, bouncing off walls that were invisible, but, judging by the sound, super smooth, coming back to him in this whisper that was both spooky and totally captivating. It felt like the cave itself was talking, you know? Shh. Almost like there were invisible things lurking in the dark, watching his every move, every breath, every frantic thump of his heart. And the smell. Oh man, it just kept getting stronger, wrapping around him, filling his lungs. It was that deep, primal smell of damp earth, mixed with ozone, like after a crazy thunderstorm. And then something else, something like fresh, super clear river water, even though he couldn't hear a river anywhere. His crazy sharp nose picked up every single little detail, a tiny whiff of minerals, a subtle hint of mold, but not that gross, rotten kind, more like an ancient, almost fossilized smell, like dust from centuries ago. It was the scent of pure, untouched wildness, of isolation that had lasted forever, the very breath of an unknown world where literally no living thing had ever stepped foot. He just kept walking, his whole body tense, but his mind, full of this wild anticipation. Step after careful step, his senses were literally his only eyes, pulling him through that thick, thick gloom. He was always touching the walls, feeling them out. Sometimes they felt cold and damp, covered in this thin film of condensation, like the mountain itself was sweating from hundreds of years of just being there. Other spots, they were dry and dusty, like water had never even touched them. He felt tiny, sharp stones under his feet, then suddenly, smooth, polished sections, then back to lumpy bits covered in sticky, gross slime. His thin, super sensitive fingers would hit tiny little growths, almost like mini stalactites clinging to the rock. Then these smooth, wavy indents, like some massive, powerful underground river, had once roared through here, leaving behind only these silent stories. This tunnel, man, it was anything but straight. It just twisted and turned, dropping deeper and deeper, then sort of rising a bit, making Gollum constantly contort his body, stoop down, crouch low, slide sideways. He could feel the air around him getting thicker, heavier, almost like it was pressing in from every direction, trying to halt his forward crawl. A wave of claustrophobia, something he hardly ever felt in his familiar home caves, grabbed his chest for a second with an icy squeeze. But his curiosity, that was way stronger, more powerful than any fear. What in the world was waiting at the end of this twisted path? What kind of secret, what ancient puzzle was this new, freshly exposed vein of the mountain hiding? He walked for so long, seriously, He just lost all sense of time. Hours, maybe even whole days, just melted away in that total darkness. His stomach was cramping with hunger, and that little voice inside him, the one belonging to his precious, it was whispering about food, about prey. But he just couldn't stop. This was way too big, too thrilling. His instincts, that raw animal part of him, that deep, almost mystical link he had to the stone and earth, it just pushed him on, right into the very core of the unknown. Ahead, he felt it with every fiber of his being. There was something special, something waiting just for him. Then out of nowhere, after yet another sharp, totally unexpected bend in the tunnel, he noticed a tiny shift in the darkness around him, a darkness that had seemed so utterly impenetrable. At first, he figured it was just his exhausted, worn-out mind playing tricks, starting to conjure up illusions, desperately searching for any kind of light. But as he kept going, it got clearer, no doubt about it. A really, really faint, almost ghostly shimmer, like a distant fading ember. His eyes, completely used to the pitch black, able to pick up even the tiniest bit of light, they just caught it. It definitely wasn't torchlight, or that cold shimmer of water, or even the sparkle from minerals. No, this was something else entirely. Softer, spread out, like the glow from sticky dew, or some kind of ghostly mist. He slowed right down, super careful, like a thief creeping up on some sleeping, unbelievably valuable treasure. His heart was just pounding in his chest, echoing loud and damp in that narrow tunnel. What on earth could it be? Could it be another precious, something he could snatch for himself? Or was this something totally, completely different? Something he had never, ever laid eyes on in all his long, miserable years stuck in this mountain. With every single step, that glow got a little brighter, a little clearer, filling the whole space with this absolutely otherworldly light. It was greenish blue, super soft, almost like neon, but somehow still gentle, like 1,000 tiny, ethereal fireflies had just decided to hang out in one spot. It didn't cast any shadows. It just seemed to melt into the air, softly lighting up only the edges of everything around him, making it all look unreal, almost fantastical. He felt his pupils shrink, then widen, trying desperately to focus on this wild, amazing sight. And then, he finally stepped into a small cave, a real secret grotto. It was pretty small, honestly, no bigger than his own little burrow. But wow, it was completely different. The walls, even part of the low, arched ceiling, they were all covered in moss. But this wasn't just any old moss you'd recognize. This moss glowed. Thousands of tiny, almost microscopic threads, like they were literally woven from living, ethereal light, covered every inch of the stone surface. They pulsed with this barely there, slow shimmer, creating a ghostly, totally surreal, and utterly enchanting vibe in the cave. That light was so soft, so gentle, like moonlight, and it didn't hurt his eyes at all. It was actually bright enough for Gollum to make out every single tiny detail of this astonishing spot. Little stalactite growths hanging from the ceiling, which now looked like these delicate, icy icicles, and that thin layer of mud on the floor that just shimmered, reflecting the green glow, almost like the surface of some weird, alien lake. The air in here was damp, heavy, thick with the smell of earth and something else, something alive. It smelled like life itself was just oozing through the stone, filling this space with its raw, primordial energy. Gollum just froze. His thin, trembling fingers reached out toward the glowing moss, like he wanted to touch a miracle, but then he stopped a couple of inches short. He was actually scared to disturb this fragile, almost magical sight, scared he'd ruin it with his touch. This was just so incredibly beautiful, so unlike anything, so completely beyond his tiny, miserable, gloomy life. For a moment, even Gollum, this creature used to nothing but ugliness, darkness, and madness, he stood there in this almost sacred, reverent awe. This wasn't the precious, no. This was something so much deeper, so much purer, something alive and just stunningly beautiful, born right in the mountain's deepest core, hidden from the whole wide world until this very moment. He circled the little cave slowly, almost like it was a ritual, his eyes just soaking in every detail, lit by that ghostly, pulsating moss light. On one wall, he spotted this tiny little niche where crystal clear water had collected, just a small pool, barely up to his ankles. He dipped his hand in, letting his thin fingers sink below the surface. The water was freezing, piercingly cold, but ridiculously pure. No smell, no taste whatsoever. A light, almost invisible vapor drifted up from it. You couldn't see it in this light, but he could feel it on his skin, like the breath of ages. This place, it was a sanctuary, a pristine, untouched shrine, completely hidden from the whole outside world, from anyone else's prying eyes. And get this, he, Gollum, was the very first to discover it, the only one. That knowledge just filled him with this strange, indescribable feeling. Not pride, not greed, no. Something way deeper, almost. A sense of belonging. This cave was now his, just like everything else in this mountain was his, but in this really special, totally different way. It was his secret, his own personal, unfathomable mystery that he would guard. He stayed there for such a long, long time, just sitting in absolute silence, watching that slow, pulsating glow from the moss, like he was totally under a spell. Sometimes, he even thought he could hear the moss growing, how it was reaching out to some invisible energy source deep inside the earth, right to its very heart. It was a sound only his super-sensitive, tormented soul could pick up, the actual sound of life, pushing right through solid stone. Now, we usually think of Gollum as this pathetic, suffering creature, right? Totally obsessed with his ring, having lost absolutely everything. And yeah, he totally is. But his world, his home, his connection with this ancient mountain, it's so much deeper than you might think at first glance. He doesn't just live here. He is this place. He's a living part of it, its ongoing story. So when he stumbles upon a new, untouched vein, a brand new tunnel, that's not just some random discovery. It's like an expansion of himself, his very soul, his own territory growing bigger. It's almost as if the mountain, his eternal mother, has finally unveiled another one of its ancient secrets, another hidden little nook, accessible only to him, her one and only faithful son. After a while, when the hunger pangs and sheer exhaustion really started to creep in, pushing past that feeling of wonder, Gollum slowly, oh so reluctantly, finally left the glowing cave. He just had to look back one last time, trying to etch every single detail into his mind, every shimmer of light, every curve. This place was now a part of his memories, woven into his own personal myth, his most secret treasure. He went back the exact same way he'd come. Now, every rustle, every little bump was familiar to him, but they hadn't lost their mystery, had they? Instead, they'd just taken on a whole new meaning. The air was still damp, the walls still chilling, The echo of his bare feet still bounced loud through the tunnel. But this time, it sounded like the echo of pure victory. The echo of a massive discovery. The echo of a brand new, previously hidden piece of his world. When he finally made it back into the familiar, yet still just as dark, passages of his usual lair, he felt different. He was still hungry. Yeah, still completely fixated on his precious. But now, something new had really sunk into his soul. The knowledge of this hidden wonder, of a shining secret that belonged only to him. And that knowledge, it was more precious than any gold. See, this story isn't just about Gollum, his obsession, or his suffering. It's way, way more than that. It's this powerful reminder that even in the absolute darkest, most desperate, and what seem like totally explored places, there's always, always something unknown, something truly beautiful, just waiting for someone to find it. Maybe it's a new tunnel deep underground, or a forgotten piece of history tucked away in some old archives, or even some hidden, untapped ability right inside us. The world is literally packed with echoes just waiting to be heard, and light aching to be discovered, ready to pierce through even the thickest gloom. The trick is, you've got to be ready to actually go on that journey, even if it plunges you into a darkness full of incredible, unknown wonders. And honestly, who knows what you might discover there? Because maybe, just maybe, your own greatest precious is waiting for you around the next bend, shining with the soft glow of some luminous moss, ready to spill its ancient secret, lying right in the heart of the mountains. If you found this journey as captivating as Gollum found his discovery, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown, and tell us in the comments, what hidden wonders do you believe exist just beyond our sight? My dear friends, as you sit by your cozy hearth, perhaps with a good mug of ale or a fragrant cup of tea, do you often ponder the things that surround you in your hobbit hole? Not just how they look, but the old, good stories they carefully hold within. How many years, sometimes even centuries, they've served us faithfully, becoming quiet, silent witnesses to our measured hobbit lives, full of hearty meals and unhurried conversations. Here in the Shire, where time flows unhurriedly and every morning greets us with a fresh breeze from the green hills and the sweet scent of earth after the morning rain, it's easy to forget the true worth of durability. The wisdom hidden in old, time-tested items, true household treasures lovingly passed down from generation to generation. We hobbits are accustomed to valuing substance and quality, but even we sometimes feel the urge for a quick fix when something breaks. It's easy to think of simply throwing it away and replacing it, barely considering that we could breathe new life into it, give it a second chance, extend its good service. But what if I told you that there's a special, almost otherworldly joy, a kind of quiet magic in the art of mending, in taking something broken, worn, almost forgotten, sometimes even despairing, and with your own hands, slowly and attentively, restoring its former beauty, or perhaps even giving it a new, deeper one. This isn't just about saving money or being thrifty, although that's certainly a wise and important part of our hobbit philosophy, especially when it comes to our pantry supplies. It's something much deeper. It's a way to connect with the object, with its past, to feel its invisible but palpable energy, and, remarkably, to establish a wonderful connection with yourself, finding inner peace as firm and unyielding as the roots of our home, dug deep into the cozy hill. Today, I want to tell you a captivating yet unhurried story about an old armchair. It's not just a piece of furniture from my hobbit hole. It's an old and loyal friend who has witnessed many cozy evenings by the fire, heard countless heartfelt stories, and quietly creaked in rhythm with its owner's happy sighs. It has stood in the coziest corner of my living room for as long as I can remember, ever since my grandfather brought it from the old mill after he married my grandmother. And, like any devoted companion, it had become a little tired over time, slightly weathered by life. Its upholstery had nobly faded under the rays of the Shire sun filtering through the round window. The padding had uncomplainingly sunken in places, and one of the armrests wobbled ominously at the slightest touch, as if pleading for help and mending. Many would probably have simply taken it to the dump or given it away, saying it had, unfortunately, served its time. But not me, and no true hobbit would. I have a special, very warm feeling for this armchair, as do, I suppose, all who truly appreciate the past and care for it with tenderness and deep respect, just as our ancestors taught us for centuries. For me, mending isn't just a task, it's a ritual, almost a sacred act. It's a blessed opportunity to slow down, to focus on the moment, to immerse myself in a world of wonderful textures, subtle scents, and the quiet, soothing sounds of work. Before embarking on this noble labor, I usually leisurely sip a warm, fragrant cup of herbal tea from my own little garden, gathered personally this summer, sitting beside the object of my care, right by the brightly burning hearth, where dry oak logs crackle cozily. I examine it carefully, inspecting every crack, every scuff, every mark of time. These marks aren't flaws. No, they are wrinkles of wisdom, honorable badges of years lived, telling of its long, rich, and very interesting life, filled with the joys and sorrows of my family. My armchair was made of dark, noble oak, strong and incredibly reliable, like everything made in the good old days. Its once polished surface held the invisible imprints of countless touches from generations of hobbits. Now, it was covered with a thin, almost imperceptible layer of dust and light, barely noticeable scratches. The first thing I started with, of course, was a thorough and delicate cleaning. Gently, using a soft, dry brush, and then a slightly damp cloth, I wiped away the dust of bygone years. Imagine this almost meditative process. Each stroke of the cloth reveals new, deeper shades of the wood, bringing out its amazing, rich color. The subtle, noble scent of old wood, mingling with the light, fresh aroma of the cleaning agent, fills my cozy workshop. It's the scent of stability, the scent of home, the scent of reliability, so familiar to every hobbit living in their hobbit hole. Next came the turn of the long-suffering armrest. It was barely hanging on, and it was clear that the old, long-dried glue had lost its former grip. I took a small, but very sharp and thin knife, and cautiously, with almost surgical precision, began to loosen the joint to carefully disassemble it. The old wooden pegs, once snugly fitted, were now covered with dried glue residue and tiny wood shavings. I meticulously cleaned each part, using the finest grit sandpaper to remove any roughness and ensure the best, strongest possible bond for the new glue. This is one of the most delicate and responsible moments. You mustn't rush here under any circumstances, especially when working on a family heirloom. Every millimeter must be perfectly prepared. The wood glue I use is special, extra strong, designed specifically for carpentry. It's thick, milky white, and smells slightly sweet, almost like almonds. I apply it in a thin, perfectly even layer to both joining surfaces, then press them firmly but gently together. And here, my faithful and reliable friends, the clamps, come to my aid. They hold the pieces together until the glue dries completely, as firmly as an embrace. I tighten them not too strongly, so as not to damage the delicate wood, but firmly enough to ensure the most reliable and strong connection. The slight creak of the wood under the clamp's pressure is a kind of quiet music to my ears, a promise of strength, durability, and future comfort. I leave it like that for a whole day, or even overnight, so the glue can really take hold firmly and reliably. Patience here is your most valuable and indispensable tool, and a hobbit has it in abundance, believe me. While the glue slowly dries, I move on to the upholstery. This is perhaps the most laborious, yet also the most transformative part of the work, where true magic happens. The old fabric, once bright and plush, was now dull, worn, and in places awkwardly torn. I carefully, step by step, remove it, revealing the chair's inner workings: springs, padding material, jute webbing. All of this also requires my close attention. I check every spring, every strand. Some of them, undoubtedly, need replacing. Their time has come. I use strong linen or jute webbing for the base, and carefully, one by one, sew them to the chair frame. Each stitch, each movement of the needle, it's a slow, rhythmic dance, requiring extreme focus and delicate precision, just like knitting a cozy scarf or weaving an apple basket. Choosing new fabric is always an exciting and very pleasant adventure. I immensely love the natural materials that the Shire provides us: dense, slightly rough linen, coarse yet soft cotton, perhaps even a warm wool tweed with a subtle pattern. It's important that the fabric is not only beautiful and pleasant to the touch, but also wonderfully strong, capable of withstanding the test of time, just like the chair itself, its wooden foundation. I choose a shade that will harmonize with the dark wood, something calm and incredibly cozy. For example, a deep forest green or an earthy brown, reminiscent of the moss covering our native hills. Once the fabric is chosen, the most responsible and precise stage begins: cutting and sewing. I measure each part of the chair with maximum accuracy, then transfer these dimensions to the fabric using tailor's chalk. I cut out the pieces with sharp tailoring shears. The sound of their gentle glide across the dense fabric always evokes pleasant, almost nostalgic feelings in me, for my grandmother had similar ones when she sewed my waistcoats. Then I take out my faithful sewing machine, old but incredibly reliable, which has served me faithfully for many, many years, inherited from my great-grandmother. Slowly, carefully, I stitch each piece, creating new, perfectly fitted covers for the seat, backrest, and armrests. The sound of the machine, its even, soothing click of the needle, becomes a gentle background noise, allowing me to fully immerse myself in the creative process. There's no place for haste or rush here, only precise, measured work and deep attention to the smallest details, as befits a true hobbit who values quality. When all the covers are ready, the grand moment of assembly arrives. First, I refresh the padding. My chair previously had horsehair, which had become matted and lost its springiness over time. I prefer to use natural latex or high-quality foam padding, which retains its shape much longer and provides truly comfortable and reliable support, like a featherbed. I firmly stuff the seat and backrest, achieving ideal firmness and shape, as if creating a fluffy cloud. Then, step by step, I stretch the new upholstery. This requires considerable strength and dexterity, but the result is worth it. I use a special upholstery stapler, securing the fabric all around the perimeter, pulling it taut so there isn't a single wrinkle or crease, only flawless smoothness. Each click of the stapler is a small but significant step towards completing my creation, towards restoring its former glory and comfort. Then I turn my attention to the wooden surfaces, which have already dried perfectly after gluing. After the glue has fully cured, I remove the clamps. The joint is now strong, monolithic, as if the wood had never been separated. But the wood surface, after all the manipulations, needs a final, most delicate treatment. I take the finest grit sandpaper and gently, barely touching, go over all the surfaces, especially where there were scratches or scuffs. This process is unhurried, deeply meditative, almost sacred. My hand glides over the wood, and I feel it becoming smoother, silkier beneath my fingers, responding to every movement. Wood dust, fine as powder, settles on the surface, testifying to the painstakingly done work. I carefully remove it, using a soft brush, so that not a single particle remains. And finally, the last, most touching touch, applying a protective finish to the wood. I use natural wood oil, which penetrates the fibers, protecting them from moisture and abrasion, and also wonderfully highlights the natural, unique beauty of the wood. I apply the oil with a soft cloth in circular, gentle motions, allowing it to slowly but surely absorb into the wood's pores. With each stroke, the dark oak comes alive before my eyes, its color becoming incredibly deep and rich, and its rich texture emerges with striking clarity. You see the annual rings, the small patterns created by nature itself, which were once hidden beneath a layer of dust and old varnish. It's almost like magic, watching this transformation, sitting in your cozy hobbit nook, to the cozy crackle of logs in the fireplace, the warm, woody scent of the oil, like the aroma of the forest, fills the air, completing this amazing process. I leave the chair for some time for the oil to fully absorb and dry, and then wipe it again with a soft, dry cloth, polishing it to a light, very pleasant matte sheen. And here it is, my favorite armchair. It stands before me, completely transformed, glowing with new life, yet at the same time, absolutely recognizable, familiar. The new upholstery, dense and incredibly cozy, invites you to sit down and relax after a good second breakfast. The wooden parts gleam with a renewed, deep luster, but they still bear those wrinkles of wisdom that make this chair truly unique and priceless. It doesn't look new. No, it looks loved, carefully repaired, ready for new adventures, and long, cozy evenings filled with good stories and kind tea. This is the whole philosophy of my approach. We hobbits live in the Shire, where everything calls us to a measured life. But even here, a certain restlessness sometimes creeps in, urging constant renewal to mindlessly chase the latest fleeting trends. But there is a special, deep beauty in refusing this mad dash, in taking something old, giving it a new, full life, extending its story, enriching it. Every patch, every carefully mended seam, every drop of oil deeply absorbed into the wood, it's part of a new chapter you write with your own hands, with love and care. It's an act of love, an act of respect for craftsmanship, for natural materials, for the rich history of our land, our families. Mending teaches us incredible patience, for haste is the enemy of good work. It teaches us to truly value labor, not only our own, but also that of others, and to understand that true quality and durability require time and deep attention. It reminds us that objects, like people, have their unique souls, their character, and that this soul only becomes richer and deeper with age, if cared for tenderly. When you mend something, you're not just fixing a break. You're restoring a deep connection. You become an integral part of that object's history, adding your own unique chapter, your contribution, as if to an old family chronicle or a record of the Shire. I'm not saying you need to mend absolutely everything indiscriminately. Of course, there are things that truly have served their purpose. Their time has passed. But very often, we throw away things that could be saved if only we allocated a little precious time, put in a little effort, learned some basic but incredibly useful skills. Our planet, our fields, our rivers, our gardens, none of it is infinite. They need careful stewardship. And every time we choose mending instead of thoughtlessly buying new, we take a small but incredibly important step towards a more sustainable, more meaningful, and harmonious existence in our beautiful Shire. So, sit in your old armchair, listen to its quiet, familiar creak. Run your hand over the worn but beloved armrests. What does it tell you? Perhaps it's time to give it some love and care? Look closer around you, in your cozy home, in your hobbit hole. Is there anything waiting for your care, your attention? An old book with a torn cover, a favorite mug with a chipped handle, perhaps even your old but wonderfully comfortable shoes that are a bit worn out after long walks across our green hills. Give it a try. You'll be surprised how much genuine joy, deep satisfaction, and inner peace this simple but profoundly important process will bring you. And you'll discover that by mending an item, you are in some sense mending something very important within yourself, finding peace and calm in simple yet profound and meaningful tasks. After all, the most precious things are often hidden in simple items and good, constructive deeds. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, and share your own stories in the comments below. Probably each of us has at least once wondered about the secrets old maps hold. But what if we're talking about a map that doesn't just hold old roads, but the key to an entire kingdom, a lost treasure, and the hope of a whole people? Imagine this scene. Deep night, absolute silence, broken only by the rare crackle of coal in a campfire somewhere outside the tent, and the faint flickering light of a covered lantern penetrating the thick, coarse fabric. The lantern sits on a small camp table, its light dim, golden, casting long shadows across the tent walls, creating an atmosphere of mystery and solitude. In this dim, almost intimate circle of light sit two figures. One, stern and majestic in appearance, his beard carefully groomed with the dignity befitting a chieftain of an ancient line, his eyes burning with unquenchable resolve. Yet within their depths lies an unutterable weariness, the weariness of long years of wandering, of bearing the immense burden of responsibility for the fate of his entire people on his broad shoulders. His name is Thorin Oakenshield, heir to the kings under the mountain. The other, older, with softer but no less wise features. His graying beard and hair speak of years past and trials endured. He leans close, his large, calloused fingers, accustomed to hard labor in the mines and the axe handle, now glide with surprising tenderness and caution over the fragile, time-yellowed parchment. This is Balin, son of Fundin, one of Thorin's most loyal and oldest companions. And before them, spread out on the rough wooden table, lies the map of Thror, an ancient artifact, its age measured in centuries, if not millennia. It is a genuine work of dwarven art and secret knowledge. It is not just a piece of hide with landmarks depicted on it. It is a scroll imbued with the spirit of ancestors, their knowledge, their incomprehensible art. It carries the promise of recovering what was lost, the entire tragedy of Erebor's fall, all the bitterness and sorrow of exile. The air in the tent is palpably heavy with unspoken thoughts, with the weight of past defeats that still burn their memory, and with the burden of impending dangers whose scale is impossible to fully comprehend. The only sounds disturbing this sacred silence are the quiet rustle of the parchment as Balin carefully smooths its folds, trying not to damage the fragile fibers, and the low, barely audible whispers they exchange, discussing what they see. Every sound is amplified in the night's stillness, every movement imbued with profound meaning. The map of Thror is a genuine masterpiece of dwarven art and secret knowledge. It's not just a piece of leather with landmarks on it. It's a scroll steeped in the spirit of their ancestors, their knowledge, their incomprehensible artistry. In the dim, flickering lantern light, complex patterns and delicate lines are visible, drawn with incredible precision and care, marking not only towering mountain ranges whose peaks are hidden in clouds, but also overgrown, mysterious forests, winding rivers, and vast, desolate wastelands. Every stroke, every symbol on this map has its own meaning, its own hidden message. But most importantly, there are the runes. Some are immediately visible, simple directions understood by any dwarf with even a little knowledge of ancient script. These are the ordinary daylight runes. But there are others. The moon runes. They are the heart of this map, its main secret, its most powerful weapon. They are invisible in ordinary daylight. They only appear at a specific time, under a particular phase of the moon, when its light falls on the parchment at the right angle, or through a special, ancient spell known only to a select few. It is these that Thorin and Balin are trying to decipher tonight, attempting to understand their hidden meaning, their mysterious instructions. Their appearance is so fleeting that the slightest distraction, the slightest error, could cost them a lost opportunity. Their whisper, barely distinguishable, is interrupted only by long, drawn-out pauses, as Thorin's gaze, full of longing and determination, sweeps across familiar but now foreign lands. In his eyes is reflected the unbearable pain of losing Erebor, the lonely mountain, their ancient and magnificent homeland, now seized and defiled by the dreadful dragon Smaug, who has taken up residence in their golden halls. He remembers the tales of his grandfather, the mighty King Thror, of immeasurable treasures, of mountains of gold and precious gems extracted from the mountain's depths, of the splendor of their kingdom. He also remembers the horror of the day when news of the kingdom's fall arrived, of their flight, of a life in exile, full of humiliation, hardship, and an eternal, burning yearning for home. This map is not just a path to treasure. For him, it is a crusade, the mission of his entire life. Balin, his loyal companion, his longtime friend, who has endured all the sorrows of exile with him, understands the gravity of the moment, the unbearable burden his king carries. He himself experienced the fall of Erebor, saw the destruction, felt the bitterness of retreat, and the humiliation of wandering. His fingers, accustomed to hammer and pickaxe, now tenderly touch the ancient script, trying to read it, to hear its silent call. He knows that Thorin bears the burden of his entire lineage, that he is the last hope for the dwarves of Durin's folk, and he is ready to share that burden to the end, even if it costs his life. He is a wise counselor, a faithful shadow, capable of balancing Thorin's fiery temperament with his own calm. Night in the mountains is always special. Cold, silent, full of secrets and unspoken promises. In such stillness, every sound is amplified. Every thought seems louder, more piercing than by day. The rustle of parchment, the sound of a light sigh, the barely audible tap of a finger on the table as Thorin's finger nervously taps out an invisible rhythm. All these seem deafening in this dead silence. And now Thorin leans even closer, his breath barely stirring the lantern's thin flame, making the shadows around them tremble. His finger stops at the very spot where, they presume, the secret entrance must be. The very entrance spoken of in ancient lore. The very entrance that could be their only chance. "Here, Balin," Thorin whispers, his voice hoarse with tension and barely restrained emotion. "Here must be the words that will open the way, the words that have been hidden for ages." Balin nods, his gaze fixed on the map. He has studied this part of the map many times. Every inch of the parchment seemed familiar to him, but the moon runes were a mystery that they could never fully unravel. Each of their appearances was fleeting. Their reading required special skill, incredible concentration, and absolute precision. They only appeared under a specific moon, under certain conditions, which depended not only on the phase of the celestial body, but also on the time of year, and sometimes even the position of the stars. And even then, their meaning was not always obvious, often encrypted in ancient dwarven riddles or poetic stanzas. "My eyes are not what they once were, Thorin," Balin replies, just as softly, but with a hint of hope, squinting and trying to catch the slightest color variations on the parchment. "But I see outlines. It looks like the old dialect of the Longbeards, our ancient tongue, spoken by our ancestors even before the fall of the kingdom. The Longbeards, that was their ancient, glorious lineage, a name they were proud of, and which obliged them to preserve traditions. Their language was full of ancient phrases, metaphors, encrypted meanings that were understood only by those who knew their history and culture. It was no wonder that even for experienced dwarves, who knew many languages and dialects, deciphering these runes was a real challenge, bordering on art. For it was not a simple text, but something like a complex puzzle, whose keys were only known to their ancestors, passed down by word of mouth, from generation to generation. "Stand by the gray stone when the thrush knocks," Thorin repeats softly, his voice echoing from the depths of memory, trying to connect fragments of knowledge heard from his grandfather with what they see on the map. "And when the setting sun, with the last light of Durin's day, will shine upon the keyhole." These words were part of an old song, an ancient riddle passed down from generation to generation, a kind of lullaby for dwarven children, sung to them by their mothers. But only now, in this tent, on this night, their true meaning began to clarify, gaining a real, physical significance. They were not merely poetic lines, but direct instructions, carved in stone, encrypted in verse, so that only true heirs could understand them, so that only those who knew the history could find the way. The lantern crackles softly, as if echoing their thoughts, as if agreeing with their conjectures. Long shadows dance on the tent walls, creating strange, moving figures that either threaten or promise. In such an environment, surrounded by ancient mountains and night silence, it is easy to believe in magic, in ancient prophecies, and in the incomprehensible power of fate that guides them. Thorin feels the weight of centuries pressing upon him, the weight of all his ancestors, the weight of every dwarf of his people. He is not merely seeking gold, though gold was important for restoring their wealth. He is seeking his heritage, his lost honor, the future of his people who have wandered the world, deprived of home. He is the last of Durin's folk who can do this, who can change the course of history, and he understands this. Balin, meanwhile, continues to meticulously study the map, his gaze gliding over every line, every dot, every symbol. He is looking for something more than just words or familiar landmarks. He is searching for barely perceptible clues, unobvious symbols that could confirm or refute their conjectures. Perhaps a small mark, a barely visible scratch left by the hand of an ancient cartographer, or a subtle change in the ink's color. He leaves no detail unnoticed. The silence around them becomes so thick that it feels as if one could touch it, almost physically sense it. In the distance, from somewhere in the high mountain gorges, the howling of the wind can be heard, carrying with it the frosty breath of the mountains, a cold that penetrates even through the thick tent fabric. Every minute spent over this map brings them closer to the solution, or, conversely, pushes them away. The night vigil they kept over the parchment was not merely an intellectual exercise or an attempt at decryption. It was a form of prayer, a meditation, a deep immersion in the past to find a guiding thread to the future. It was a battle of minds and souls, unfolding in complete silence. Sometimes, Thorin leans back, his shoulders slumping heavily. He closes his eyes and tries to imagine the lonely mountain as it was before Smaug, full of life, the clang of hammers, the ringing songs of smiths, the laughter of children, joyful shouts, the sounds of feasts and celebrations. To imagine dwarves busy with their work, content, strong, prosperous. And then he opens his eyes and sees before him only an old, faded map, illuminated by the dim, flickering light of the lantern. The contrast is too great, too painful, and this unbearable difference only strengthens his resolve, fuels his anger, and his yearning for return. Balin, always more pragmatic but no less devoted, thinks about logistics, about the practical aspects of their insane plan. The path to Erebor is long and incredibly dangerous. The mountains are full of orcs, goblins, wolves, and other creatures that make every step risky. The wastes are no less treacherous, full of hungry beasts and brigands. And Smaug, the mere name of this monster, its description, sent shivers down the spines even of the bravest dwarves, even those who did not fear death. But all this was secondary. All these dangers paled before the main goal. The main thing was to find the entrance. The main thing was to unravel the mystery of the moon runes. The main thing was to get a chance. "Here, Thorin," Balin says again, his voice slightly more agitated as he points to a tiny symbol they might have missed before, or which only now appeared under the right angle of light or shadow. This looks like a symbolic representation of the western side of the mountain. And this small dot, it precisely indicates that the entrance should be hidden, disguised so that no one can find it without special knowledge. The symbols Balin discovered were so tiny, so skillfully woven into the map's overall texture, that they were barely visible without a magnifying glass or a keen eye. This confirmed the hypothesis that the entrance was masterfully disguised so that no one could find it except those who knew of its existence and possessed ancient knowledge. It was the work of dwarven masters, their secret, their last line of defense. And it meant they needed not just to find the mountain, but to carefully examine its western slopes, searching for that gray stone and that door mentioned in the lore. The thought that the entrance was hidden did not frighten them, but rather encouraged them, filling their hearts with a new, albeit fragile, hope. For it meant that Smaug, however huge and powerful he might be, however keen his smell and sight, might not know about it, or might not deem it significant, or at least, he might not be able to penetrate through it if it was so small. This gave them a tiny, but so crucial, ray of hope, the only opportunity to enter the mountain unnoticed, to bypass the dragon. They continued to study the map, moving from one rune to another, from one symbol to the next, their fingers carefully gliding over the parchment, as if feeling their way in the dark. Every piece of information was precious. Every deciphered line or symbol brought them closer to their goal, to the heart of the mountain. Throughout the night, they sat like this, leaning over the map, their heads close, their breaths mingling in a single impulse. It was their silent conversation, without words, almost telepathic, a conversation that could change not only their fates, but the fates of the entire dwarven people. Gradually, with each passing minute, with each deciphered line, the details began to fall into place, like parts of an ancient mechanism slowly coming into motion. Riddles that seemed insoluble and meaningless acquired meaning, becoming as clear as a mountain stream. The old songs and lore they had heard as children suddenly became not just fairy tales or legends, but guiding stars, showing them the way. The map ceased to be merely a piece of parchment. It became alive, speaking, revealing its deepest secrets, whispering of the past and the future. Sometimes, Thorin thoughtfully ran his finger over the faded ink, feeling the parchment's unevenness, its fragility, its incredible antiquity. He imagined his grandfather, King Thror, and other ancestors who might have leaned over this same map centuries ago, planning new mines, new halls, new paths in the mountain's depths. And now, he, Thorin, the last of the great lineage, was doing the same, but with a different, far more tragic and desperate goal: to reclaim what was lost, to restore what was ruined, to bring his people home. The quiet rustle of the map, as it was carefully turned or smoothed, was the only sound disturbing the absolute silence, as if the parchment itself breathed. It was like the whisper of ancient spirits, the creak of old doors, the sound of time slipping through fingers, the echo of bygone eras. In this sound, there was something deeply melancholic, like a farewell to the past, but at the same time promising, carrying within it the seed of hope for the future. The morning light was still far away, beyond the horizon, but in the air there was already a slight premonition of dawn, its cold, fresh breath. The stars in the sky seemed brighter and closer than usual, as if they too were watching them, holding their breath, as if the heavens themselves were part of this night vigil. In such moments, when the world around stands still, one begins to believe in signs, in the idea that the world itself guides you, that fate leads you along a certain path. And they, Thorin and Balin, felt this invisible guidance, this inner calling. Their mission was not merely dangerous. It was practically suicidal in the eyes of many who knew of Smaug's terror. The reclaiming of Erebor, the mighty mountain guarded by the most powerful dragon of its time, seemed madness, an act of desperation. But for Thorin and Balin, it was the only truth, the only goal that made sense, that gave their lives meaning, their honor, their past, their future. Everything depended on this map, on these moon runes, on their ability to unravel their mystery. And when the last whisper dissolved into the night silence, when the last symbol was somehow understood, when every line and every dot on the map acquired its meaning, they carefully rolled up the map. Its rustle was now not just a sound, but the echo of a decision made, a silent vow given to each other and to their entire people. Morning was to bring new trials, new roads, but now they had a path, they had hope, they had a plan. The quiet conversation over the map of Thror had ended, but only to give birth to the greatest journey of their lives. A journey that was either to return everything to them or to take their last. And who knows what else awaits them ahead in the depths of the lonely mountain, which they so desperately sought to reclaim. Their hope was fragile, like old parchment that could crumble at one wrong move, yet strong as an ancient rock, like a diamond hewn from the heart of the earth. And by this hope they lived, and for it they ventured into the unknown, towards their destiny, towards the mountain. What do you think of this ancient map and the quest it inspires? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more tales from the world of forgotten treasures.